Let's see how it turns out.
I know, that's such a...
Good morning. The pre-show here is getting as bad as it is on the internet.
That's why I kept waiting to sue the captain.
All right, good morning. We're Genesis 23 and 24. We'll have to see how well our person on the computer there can keep up. I've got to get this to where I can actually see what it's supposed to be showing me. Oh boy, that's really bad. All right, we're in Genesis chapter 23. I'm reading from the NASB 1995 today. It says, now Sarah lived 127 years. These were the years of the life of Sarah. Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron. Hebron, different name for the same place, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went in to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. Then Abraham rose from before his dead and spoke to the sons of Heth, Heth being a descendant of Ham or Ham, and saying, I am a stranger and a sojourner among you. Give me a burial site among you that I might bury my dead out of my sight. Now we know that this is the culture of the times. You got to get buried before the sun goes down, because that's tradition in the ancient Near East anyhow, not just with the Hebrews. So this is something that's probably happening in a bit of a hurry. And Heth is, like I said, is descendant, he's the Hittites, or he's the father of that group of people who are mentioned in the scriptures. And we'll get to them in a little bit more here. So he goes and he asks for a burial spot from Heth's descendants, the sons of Heth. In verse 5, the sons of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, hear us, my lord, you are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our graves. None of us will refuse you his grave for burying your dead. All right, now, like I said earlier this week in the show that we did on the website, a couple things going on here. First, this might be mild flattery. You know, Abraham saying, you're a mighty, my lord, Adonai, you're a mighty prince among us. So it might be sincere, it might not. We don't know. But when they offer to give you a grave, you have to understand that these graves were usually carved out of a rock wall or a mountain somewhere. And they were quite extensive and they were expensive. So offering to just give it to him, we'll see. Because in the ancient Near East, the Middle Eastern culture is you're supposed to offer this type of stuff, even though you don't really mean it. And what would happen is the first time it's offered, you're also supposed to say no. And they'll go back and forth a couple of times. So if it's offered a third or fourth time, that means they really mean it. Then it's okay to say yes. And if you're paying attention in your scriptures, this happens several places where the person offering hospitality offers it several times or really insists so that the person being offered knows it's sincere. It's like with Lot, all but drags the two angels into his house. So that's kind of what we're looking at here too, possibly. So Abraham rose and bowed to the people of the land, the sons of Heth. We're going to go next slide here, and it says verse 8, and he spoke with them, saying, if it is your wish for me to bury my dead out of my sight, hear me, and approach Ephron, the son of Zohar, for me, that he may give me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns, which is at the end of his field, for the full price. Let him give it to me in your presence for a burial site. Now, this cave of Machpelah is going to be important to us because several of the patriarchs are going to be buried there. If I'm not mistaken, Abraham, Jacob wants to be buried there. There's several of them that are going to end up being buried there. And these burial sites are usually family things. So when you're gathered to your fathers, it's your bones being gathered into the burial site, because they would lay you out, they would carve the cave, and it would go way back in, but they'd have several shelves in there. They'd lay the dead body on the shelves until it was nothing but bones. Then they'd go in, they'd clean the bones, and they'd either wrap them up in a cloth and set them in the back of the cave with all the others that had died before, or they'd put them in a sepulcher, depending on how wealthy the family is. They're called a bone box. And that's part of where that saying gathered to your fathers comes from, is because it basically means your bones are going to be gathered and laid with your father's bones. But when he asks to buy this at the full price, this is something else I had to read into. And I was in a cultural study Bible. As I said earlier this year, there's two prices for the land at this point in time and in their culture. It's kind of like the partial price for like the Shemitah or the Jubilee. You're essentially renting it, or the full price. The full price actually transfers the land. It's no longer part of a family inheritance. So if you buy it without paying the full price for it, it can be demanded back from you in a time of economic hard times or pressure. So in this case, he's asking to buy it for the full price. He wants to buy the land in perpetuity. Verse 10. Now Ephron was sitting among the sons of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the hearing of the sons of Heth, even of all who went in at the gate of the city, saying, No, my Lord, hear me, I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. So again, it's an offer to give it to him. A couple of things going on here. Now, the Hittites, we know that primarily they lived in Turkey, but also in Canaan, and they're mentioned by different names throughout the Middle East. The Bible calls them Hittites. When it says they're sitting at the gate, that's essentially the city's courtroom. All official business, legal business happens at the gate. And then Ephron offers to just give them the cave. It's probably worth a lot, as we're about to see. It's not cheap. If Abraham had taken that as a free gift, he becomes indebted to Ephron, and that's not what he wants to do. So Abraham, in verse 12, he says, And Abraham bowed before the people of the land, and he spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, If you will only please listen to me, I will give the full price for the field. We'll go to the next page. Before the people of the land. So he wants to buy the whole thing. He just wants to buy it. This is that negotiation going on back and forth. And more than likely, given the nature of the people groups here, the sons of Heth are trying to put Abraham in a position where he's beholden or in debt to them. So he spoke to Ephron, and we read that the Ephron answered Abraham, saying to him, My Lord, listen to me, a piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between me and you? So he's named his price. He wants 400 shekels for it. A lot of people think that was exorbitant. And if it was just the right to buy it and use it for a long period of time, yeah, it might have been. But if this is the price of the full, transfer the deed and everything over to Abraham's family forever, not necessarily exorbitant there. But the way he does this here, it's kind of, from my time over there, it's a very cultural way that I've run into before when I was over in Saudi Arabia. They talk this way too. And I'm trying to be polite here. It's the way of the Arab. And that's not necessarily a good way of saying things. It's a sneaky and underhanded, and it's a less than scrupulous way of doing business. So Ephron might be trying to take advantage of Abraham here, and he might not. We don't really know. So he says, worth 400, so take it from me, so bury your dead. Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out for Ephron the silver which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, commercial standard. I read that up on that too. There's two different standards for weighing the money at that time. There's commercial standard, which is the one that they would sometimes shave the edges of the coin so that the coin wasn't worth as much, and they'd collect the shavings in the weights might not be fair and correct. There was also a royal standard. You didn't mess with the king's weights, because that might lead to you going into the dungeon or losing your life. But the commercial standard could sometimes be played with, so you had to be careful with that. This is just probably a note to let you know how it was handled. You see, yep, and then we'll go to the next slide. So it's verse 17. So Ephron's field, which was in Machpelah, which faced Mamre, and we've already seen that several times in our study of Genesis. The field and cave which was in it, and all the trees which were in the field that were within all the confines of its borders were deeded over to Abraham for possession in the presence of the sons of Heth, before all who went in at the gate of the city. So this is well known. It's an official transaction. It's official transfer of the property. We see what was on the property, but we're never told how big it is. After this, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife, in the cave of the field of Machpelah, facing Mamre, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave that is in it were deeded over to Abraham for a burial site by the sons of Heth. Now, one of the significant things here that we need to understand is that from this point forward, Abraham has a legitimate place in the land that today we call Palestine, or the Holy Lands, or the land of Canaan, or whatever name you want to call it. The modern argument that the Hebrews have no just claim to it, it was sold to them by the sons of Heth. And if you get into the rabbis arguing Heth and all the Canaanites who took it, that wasn't supposed to be their land anyhow. That was supposed to belong to Shem, and they usurped it, or however you want to pronounce that word. But the point here is, Abraham has been told by Abimelech, I think it was, one of the kings of Canaan or Philistines, yeah, you can live here. And now the sons of the Hethites have sold him land there. So the sons and descendants of Abraham do have a just claim to the land. They have acquired it legally, which, by the way, is going to mirror something that if you're following our study in the Birthright and the Scepter, when we get into how this country in the United States is connected to Ephraim. When our founding fathers came here, there were two groups of people, Jamestown versus the Pilgrims, Plymouth Rock. Yeah. Plymouth Rock was given permission, sought permission from the Native Americans to live here, and even bought some of the rights to live here. They came legitimately. Jamestown just came and took. That's going to be two different ways of doing things. Yahweh's people versus others. The rightful immigrants and settlers into this land got a claim to this land just like Abraham and his descendants did here. So when we've got people running around today saying that, quote unquote, white man has, no claim to the United States of America, this land, that we stole it, not entirely true. Just like when the Arabs say the same thing about the Jews in the Middle East, not entirely true. There are people groups associated with them that didn't deal fairly with folks, but Yahweh's remnant always does. So we go to chapter 24. Now Abraham was old, advanced in age, and Yahweh had blessed Abraham in every way. Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had charge of all that he owned, please place your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by Yahweh, the Elohim of heaven and the Elohim of earth, that you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites among whom I live, but you will go to my country and my relatives and take a wife from my son, for my son Isaac. Okay, a lot going on here. This is probably, what was his name? The servant from Damascus or whatever. Remember when Yahweh first comes to Abraham and says, you're going to have your own son? And he says, well, right now I don't have an heir. It's going to go to my servant. I think he's from Damascus. I don't remember. It's not Eleazar. Eleazar. Wow. Telling you something's wrong with it. I've been remembering names. Never been able to do that my whole life. That's not a good sign. So he's got charge of everything that Abraham owns, even over Isaac. Please place your hand under my thigh. Now we'll see this a lot. I've read in some studies of the ancient times, they think what this is a euphemism for taking hold of somebody's genitals. And the whole point there is it makes the oath, it's a symbolic way of saying this oath will go past your death. So if you die, I'll still, because it's a form of progenitor, your procreation is how I get the next generation and the next generation and next generation. I don't know whether or not this is an accurate understanding, but it would seem to fit. Just like we know that the Hebrews use feet as a I've lost the word. Yeah, it's a symbolic of genitalia as well, as a euphemism. There we go, for genitalia. So this could very well be a way of showing a physical representation that this is an everlasting oath. And then it says, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites. So he doesn't, even before Moses was told, don't mix with Canaanites, Abraham doesn't want to do that either. But now Abraham's probably, he tells him, go back and get a relative, a daughter, a wife from my relatives. This is probably because of inheritance rights. And he doesn't want to get his inheritance rights either in the physical world of man or in the spiritual promises from Yahweh. He doesn't want to get them mixed up with different bloodlines that are not of Yahweh's choosing or making or doing. So he sends the servant back to his home, his homeland, back to his family and relatives to take up a bride for Isaac. Verse 5, the servant said to him, suppose the woman is not willing to follow me to this land. Should I take your son back to the land from where you came? So basically the servant is saying, well, okay, what if she says yes, but she won't follow me? What do I do? And then Abraham said to him, beware that you do not take my son back there. So Abraham does not want his son going back to the land where he came from, back to the Chaldeans. We don't know why, we're not told, but it's probably because it might lead Isaac astray from the way he's supposed to walk. So Yahweh, the Elohim of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my birth, and who spoke to me and who swore to me, saying, to your descendants I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you will take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this my oath. Only do not take my son back there. So the servant placed his hand under the thigh of Abraham, his master, and swore to him concerning this matter. So Abraham just trusts that the angel of Yahweh is going to go before his servant. In other words, pave the way, make sure everything happens the way Yahweh wants it to happen. So Abraham is showing mature faith. This is just going to happen. Just what Yahweh wants me to do, Yahweh will take care of this. In the past, he tried to fulfill Yahweh's promises through Ishmael, do things his own way by saying that Sarah or Sari was his sister instead of his wife. And he didn't fully trust Yahweh. Well, now he does, especially since the incident where he goes to offer up Isaac. He's fully mature in the faith now, or at least it appears to be. And then he tells the servant, hey, you do what I ask. She doesn't comply. You're free from my oath. So he's not going to hold his servant to this oath. We'll go to the next slide then in verse 10. Then the servant took 10 camels from the camels of his master and set out with a variety of good things of his master's in his hand. 10 camels can carry a lot, folks. Now, we don't know if he only took 10 camels or if this is just 10 camels full of good things, because you're going to need people to guard it. You're going to need people to serve the animals along the way. You're going to need pack animals to carry the food for your journey and all your supplies, your tents and everything. So this might have been a fairly good-sized little caravan. We don't know, but it's at least 10 camels. Oh, by the way, camels are unclean. We're living in a time here with Abraham where he knew the difference between clean and unclean animals. We're told that with Noah. The only reason I bring this up is to show you that they would still have things to do with unclean. Because like when Yeshua rides into the Jerusalem on the back of a donkey's unclean. So it's just been one of these things to me I've always wondered about, because like in our culture we like dogs. Dogs are unclean. In their culture over there, dogs are thought of as just one step above pigs, and not a big step either. But I'm thinking, why? Was it just because they're unclean? I don't think so. I think it's just a cultural thing. And I've always wrestled with that. What are we supposed to make of that and still being obedient to things? Well, they use camels and horses, donkeys, which are all unclean. And if you pay attention to the scriptures, they still have dogs in and around their culture. They use them as work animals for certain purposes. So I figure, I don't think I'm doing too much wrong with that. Us having pets just makes you unclean. But he takes good things for his master, and he rose and he went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. I looked for that for a map, couldn't find it. So we don't know exactly where this was, but Mesopotamia that's the Greek word for between the rivers. And I don't know the Hebrew word for it, but there's a Hebrew word for it too. It's the area between the Euphrates and Tigris River. Yes, it's that little area in there. Verse 11, he made the camels to kneel down outside the city by the well of water at evening time, the time when women go out to draw water. He said, O Yahweh, the Elohim of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show loving kindness to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now may it be that the girl to whom I say, please let down your jar so that I may drink, and who answers, drink, and I will water your camels also, may she be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. And by this I will know that you have shown loving kindness to my master. Now, this prayer, first of all, we don't know whether or not the servant actually believes in Yahweh. He's talking, he's praying to Yahweh. Remember, he might be a polytheistic servant who just recognizes Yahweh as one of many Elohims. But nevertheless, what he's doing is he's looking for guidance. And we see this same practice in, like when Gideon lays the fleece down and he asks Yahweh, leave the dew on the fleece but not the ground. And the next day, leave the dew on the ground but not the fleece. And, a lot of people think, well, they're testing Yahweh. No, they're asking for confirmation. They want to be sure that what they do is Yahweh's will. And a lot of times they'd cast lots as well. The priest used the umam and the thummim or whatever I think it is as a form of casting lots. We see the apostles casting lots when they replaced Judas. And the New Testament talks several times about casting lots. I think it's in Acts where we see that happen several times. So this is just a form of Abraham's servant wanting to be sure that he has a condition set forth that's unusual enough that he can be sure he's got the right young lady. To water 10 camels could take up to 10 gallons a camel. So she might, just for those 10 camels, given the average size pot that she's carrying, she may have to make 100 trips to water 10 camels, depending how long it's been since the last time they were watered. She'd know this. So if she were, whoever the young woman is, were to offer on her own account to water the camels, she's offering to be there for an hour or two. So that would be unusual in their culture. So verse 15, Rebekah's chosen. Before he had finished speaking in his mind here, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Abraham's brother Nahor, came out with her jar on her shoulder. So this is definitely blood of Abraham. The girl was very beautiful, a virgin, and no man had relations with her. And she went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, please let me drink a little water from your jar. She said, drink, my lord. And she quickly lowered her jar to her hand and gave him a drink. Now, when she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw also for your camels until they have finished drinking. Let's see, verse 20 on the next slide. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran back to the well to draw, and she drew for all his camels. Meanwhile, the man was gazing at her in silence to know whether Yahweh had made his journey successful or not. Well, she's doing exactly what he had set forth for Yahweh to do. So when the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing half a shekel and 2 bracelets for her wrists weighing 10 shekels in gold. And he said, whose daughter are you? So he wants to make sure she's from Abraham's family. He's put this ring in her nose, and it's just like it clips to the septum of your nose. The 2 bracelets. That's essentially, in their culture, saying she's now chosen. She's been spoken for. She's betrothed. He says, please tell me, is there room for us to lodge in your father's house? He's asking for a big ask. And this is unusual for their culture. Normally you wait to be invited. So he's got at least 10 camels. So unless her house is fairly wealthy, they may not have this. And it's not polite in their culture to ask this. So she said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, who she bore to Nahor. Again, she said to him, we have plenty of both straw and feed and room to lodge. So we see here that Nahor is not mentioned in this narration as we go along. 26, the man bowed low and worshiped Yahweh. He said, blessed be Yahweh, the Elohim of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loving kindness and his truth toward my master. As for me, Yahweh has guided me in the way to the house of my master's brothers. So the servant is praising Yahweh, blessing him for guiding him correctly where Yahweh wanted him to go. And he sees that he might actually succeed in his mission for his master Abraham. Verse 28, then the girl ran and told her mother's household about these things. Remember, this started evening time watering the camels. So evening might not necessarily be when the sun is going down. This could be sometime after 3 o'clock. This is where Rick mentioned sometimes between the evenings. It could be anytime after noon, depending on how culturally it's talked about, because all these events would take some time. So she says, now Rebecca had a brother whose name was Laban. We know who he is. We're going to see him again with Rachel and Leah. And Laban ran outside to the man at the spring. So he's going to go out when he's still at the spring. And when he saw the ring and the bracelet on his sister's wrist, and when he heard the words of Rebekah, his sister, saying, this is what the man said to me, he went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. And he said, come in, blessed of Yahweh. Why do you stand outside, since I have prepared the house and place for the camels? So there's a lot going on here. We're not necessarily meant to understand how long this takes or what order it all happens in. The narration is hitting on the important parts. But now Laban probably doesn't know Yahweh. He's just recognizing that he is Yahweh's the name of it, because we know at this point in time, the people didn't know him by Yahweh, so it might have been El Shaddai or something else. But Laban is saying, okay, this man has, a powerful Elohim with him, so he's recognizing that. So the man entered the house, and then Laban unloaded the camels, and he gave straw and feed to the camels and water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. So right there, we know he had other men with him. But when food was set before him to eat, he, the servant, said, I will not eat until I have told my business. Now, this is normal practice in their day and age. Until you finish with the mission you were sent on, you're not supposed to eat or drink or take care of yourself, now that he's there to conduct the business. And he, Laban, said, speak on. So he, the servant, said, I am Abraham's servant. Yahweh has greatly blessed my master, so that he has become rich, and he has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold and servants and maids, camels and donkeys. Now Sarah, my father's wife, bore a son to my master in her old age. He has given him all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, you shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I live, but you shall go to my father's house and to my relatives and take a wife for my son. So Abraham's servant has told Rachel's family that her father-in-law is very rich, lives in Canaan, and has given everything that he owns to his son Isaac, the one that the servant is looking for a wife for. So Rachel's family now knows that they're going to be marrying into wealth. But now the fact that they had room for these 10 camels and all these other men on the spur of the moment, they're not poor either. Verse 39, he said, I said to my master, suppose the woman does not follow me. He said to me, Yahweh, before whom I've walked, will send his angel with you to make your journey successful. And you will take a wife for my son from my relatives and from my father's house. Then you will be free from my oath when you come to my relatives, and if they do not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. So the servant is reciting everything that he was sent to do in the terms of his oath. Verse 42, he says, so I came today to the spring, and I said, O Yahweh, the Elohim of my master Abraham, if now you will make my journey on which I go successful, behold, I am standing by the spring, and may it be that the maiden who comes out to draw, and to whom I say, please let me drink a little water from your jar, and she will say to me, you drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom Yahweh has appointed for my master's son. So now he has said, this is the prayer, this is the condition I set forward with the Elohim I'm following, and your daughter, because they already know the story that, Rachel came out, she met the conditions. So now everybody knows that, Rebecca rather. Everybody knows that Rebecca is the one that Yahweh has chosen for Isaac. Everybody in this. And then he says, before I finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebecca came out with her jar on her shoulder and went down to the spring and drew. And I said to her, please let me drink. She quickly lowered her jar from her shoulder and said, drink, and I will water your camels also. So I drank, and she watered the camels also. Then I asked her and said, whose daughter are you? And she said, the daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. And I put the ring on her nose and the bracelet on her wrists. So he's recounted everything that's happened up till now. Verse 48, he says, and I bowed low and worshiped Yahweh and blessed Yahweh, the Elohim of my master, because this is a proof that Yahweh is working here and that he's got control of this whole series of events. My master Abraham, who guided me in the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. In the right way. That's that same saying or phrase about, this is the way you travel. So now if you are going to deal kindly and truly with my master, Abraham, tell me, and if not, let me know that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. In other words, go a different way, figure out what to do next. Then Laban and Bethuel replied, the matter comes from Yahweh, so we cannot speak to you bad or good. Now they probably don't know Yahweh. They're probably pagans, polytheistic. Remember, Abram was pulled out of this group of people in this region of the world and be told that you're going to be monotheistic. I'm the only Elohim. So before he did that, he was in a polytheistic culture. So what they're probably saying is, okay, this is of your Elohim, your God. We can't tell you one way or the other here. Now what they do is they say, here is Rebekah before you, take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as Yahweh has spoken. So they see the actions, the whole story leading up to this event being Yahweh speaking through the way everything unfolded. And they give Rebekah to him. And this isn't a case of, she doesn't have a choice in all of this. She probably could have said no, as we'll see here in a little bit. But in their world and culture, probably not something you want to do. Because it's just been proven that there's a God involved here who is actively involved in this. So she's been chosen, and she would see that as she's been chosen by this God. You didn't disobey the gods or go against their will when you knew it this clearly. It's just not good for you. So verse 52, when Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the ground before Yahweh. And then it says the servant brought out articles, Abraham's servant brought out articles of silver and articles of gold and garments, and gave them to Rebekah. And he also gave precious things to her brother and to her mother. There's two things here. I've been reading about the dowries. This isn't buying a wife like she's chattel, like she's property. It serves two purposes. The things he gives to Rebekah's family are a symbol that the families are joining economically as well as by bloodlines. And so they're going to become part of an extended clan or family group. So what they would do is give gifts to the bride's family as a way of showing that, okay, our economic fortunes are here to help you as well. And it would be expected in their culture so that if Rebekah's family ever fell on hard times, Abraham, being as rich as he is, would be expected to help them. And the stuff he's given to Rebekah becomes her dowry. Now, that's not for her to do as she wishes with. It's meant in case her husband dies or divorces her and puts her, back on the shelf, as the Bible would say. That's there to provide for her and her upkeep and her survival in the event that she loses her husband as her means of taking care of her. If she never needs to spend it for that purpose, it becomes part of her inheritance that she's expected to hand down to her children. It's not something for her to do with as she pleases. It's a keepsake or a caretake that she's supposed to preserve in case she needs it to take care of herself. And a lot of times, the bride's father would also give her not property, but monetary and possession type gifts for the same purpose. So if you've got a fairly wealthy family, the bride is going to be fairly well equipped. So if the husband dies, she's probably got enough to take care of herself for the rest of her life, as long as she lives frugally. Verse 54, then he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night. When they arose in the morning, he said, send me away to my master. But her brothers, Laban, and her mother said, let the girl stay with us a few days, say 10. Afterwards she may go. Now that's custom. They usually would do this. He said to them, Abraham's servant, do not delay me, since Yahweh has prospered my way. So he's saying, don't slow me down. Yahweh's involved in this. Let's not get in the way of Elohim. Send me away that I may go to my master. And they said, we will call the girl and consult her wishes. So we see that Rebekah has a say in this. Then they called Rebekah and said to her, will you go with this man? And she said, I will go. That's probably all based on faith that she has seen what she believed to be the act of a God that she doesn't know at play in all of this, and that she's been chosen. So 59. Thus they sent away their sister Rebekah and her nurse with Abraham's servant and his men. They blessed Rebekah and said to her, so she's going to go with her nurse or probably handmaids and all. This is a blessing that's really important. It says, may you, our sister, become thousands of 10,000s, and may your descendants possess the gates of those who hate them. These are going to be prophecies that are going to be over the sons of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob eventually. The thousands is Manasseh, and the 10,000s is Ephraim, who will eventually have that blessing. We know that Rebekah is going to give us Jacob, who's going to marry Rachel. So all in the family lines, and Rachel's going to give us Joseph, who's going to give us Ephraim and Manasseh. So these prophecies are going to follow down. They're going to be fulfilled. This blessing is prophetic. And may your descendants possess the gate of those who hate them. That is also a blessing over the top of the northern kingdom, Israel, led by the house of Joseph, which is led by Ephraim. So this is a prophetic utterance by Rebekah's family over her and her that will follow for her descendants. Verse 61, then Rebekah arose with her maids, so she's got plural, and they mounted the camels and followed the man. So the servant took Rebekah and departed. Now Isaac marries Rebekah, verse 62. Now Isaac had come from going to Beer Lahai-Roa, for he was living in Negev. That's the southernmost part of the Holy Land. It's kind of big time desert there. Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, camels were coming. Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from the camel. She said to the servant, who is that man walking in the field to meet us? And the servant said, he is my master. Then she took her veil and covered herself. Now, whenever they in the ancient times would arrange royal weddings, the servants that brought the bride-to-be to the king or to the prince would cover her before she met the prince. So, folks, this is how a lot of these weddings went. The groom might not ever know what the face of the bride looks like until after the marriage, and it comes time to consummate it. These marriages back then, a lot of times, were as much for family survival and political connections as anything else. But it wasn't that it was unwillingly done. It wasn't that you were forced into these things a lot of times. You grew up in a world where that was just the way it happened, the way it was done, and what you hoped for. If you were the man, you hoped for a bride that would better your position in life and help, the family and everything. The same for the wife. Well, here she's acting on the faith of the servants recounting that there's a God involved here, a God she probably just now met in this when she first heard his name. So she covers herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. So he recounts the whole story to Isaac. Then Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent. Now she's dead, remember? And he took Rebekah, meaning takes her as his wife, and she became his wife. And he loved her, and thus Isaac was comforted at his mother's death. Why would he take her into Sarah's tent? Well, Sarah is the matriarch of Abraham's clan, all and everything he owns and all the people under him. So when he takes Rebekah into Sarah's tent, he is telling everybody in Abraham's family that Rebekah is now the matriarch of this family. So she's my wife. She's now the matriarch of the family. She's the top girl. And she becomes his wife because that's how that worked back then. If you went into the tent, consummated things, you're now married. And he says he loved her. This is something else we've noticed in the scriptures. Love in the scriptures is a purposeful choice act, something he chose to do. It's not an emotion. It could be that he had emotional feelings for her as well, and probably, given the rest of the story, he does. But he chooses to love her because that was what he chose to do. And given the story that his servant told him, he probably knows that Yahweh chose Rebekah for him. So if he's faithful, he's going to go with that. And it's just going to help. That's how that works in their life. It's the culture they lived in. Foreign to us, but that's the culture they lived in. And this is what comforts him after his mother's death. So that's as far as we got today. We will do the next two chapters next week. Comments, questions, suggestions, anything Anything on the board?
Not really.
So we're done a little early today. That's all I have. Like I said, we'll pick up the next 2 chapters next week.